Happy you could join us today, Shelly.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Yeah, my
excited.
my pleasure. I wanted to dive in. I know it's a Shelly's taken upon herself a unique model in the venture ecosystem as a way to support um, you know uh, women of color. So, can you share more on what you're doing? What is Black Girl Ventures?
Yeah, so at Black Girl Ventures, we believe that community building is a service. It's not just a nice thing to do or something that people should do, but that community is actually the point. And I'm a firm believer that social capital is the path to financial capital. And access to influential networks is one of the things that is one of the challenges that underrepresented founders face. And so, what our signature event, which is really what pushed us out into the open, is the BGV pitch competition. And that with that competition, it is Kickstarter meets Shark Tank. So there is an typically when you go to a competition, there is an audience of people, but then there's only three people making the decisions and telling you what funding you're going to get or how much of their funding you're going to get. And so I'm like, well, that kind of mirrors the problem, right? So if black women and black and brown women are starting businesses at 6 times the national average, yet receiving less than 1% of venture capital, facing bank discrimination, lack of generational wealth in the family, things like that, then why would I recreate something that kind of mirrors the issues? So I'm like, well, what else could we do? And what we do, the entire audience is a part of this experience. So 8 women would pitch from the stage, and then everybody in the audience has an opportunity to give donation based, so to give to them right out of their own pocket. On top of that, the women are pitching to their potential consumer base. So you're able to get customer feedback. You're able to kind of gauge whether or not you think something landed with a community that you're about to actually sell to. So the power of that just became like two and threefold. Our initial thing was like, let's just figure out a low barrier way to get capital into the hands of entrepreneurs. And my belief is that if you can create infusions of capital over time, along with access to networks, then you will absolutely win as a business owner and be successful. You can infuse people with capital, but if they're not surrounded by a team of people that can help them grow, then the chances for success are lower. So from there, from that pitch competition, we're surrounding them with constantly like introductions, opportunities. Accelerators and incubators now send us information. We're directly, sending it out to them, keeping up with their journey. Where are they? Encouraging them. The soft stuff that people can't necessarily measure, like self-efficacy. Like do they need counseling? Do they need what do they need in order for them to keep moving, to stay in business? The other part of it is now we have it's a massive movement. So we started with just that, right? Like it was just BGV was known for these fish contests, crowdfunded, audience gives, people get funded, and then we have partners that would work with us to get more capital out. Google Cloud for Startups is a really great partner for us in the way that we started scaling across the country through going to Google offices and holding these events. And then COVID hits, right? So we expanded where we actually recruited women to have boots on the ground in a few cities. And that's what we call our chapters, and our chapter leaders are called change agents. And so we have change agents in 5 cities across the country. We travel to about 8 cities a year, and now we have 5 cities where we have women on the ground. And we were doing a launch and working through that when COVID hit. And so now we have a very robust virtual community of now in the last couple of weeks about 600, a little over 600 women that were consistently growing and growing to take to a larger group of women so that we can now create access to networks for them, business referrals. We have weekly virtual co-working every Wednesday. We have weekly pitch practice on Wednesday nights. We have about 3 pieces of content that come out every week, specifically catering to the needs of our founders and what we're hearing from them say. So we're asking them, what kind of things do you need? They're telling us, here looking for it. And so then we're leaning right into those things.
I really love the focus that you said is like the pitching not only helps with people donate, but also they could be customers, right? I think those are the best. Those, you know, I always say those are the best types of investors. They're giving you money for their product and they're not taking equity. So they're proving out they're giving you evidence and they're using your product. So there's a lot there, and also adding value specifically catered to this population. Can you share a little bit more? What are those unique challenges that they're facing, and how are you helping more female founders of color?
Yeah, great question. One, like I said, access to networks. So when it comes to introductions, if they know someone they want to be introduced to in particular, then we can facilitate that if we're familiar with them. If not, we're directly connecting people. We just did a like a private VC feedback session that was a 20-minute pitch and a 15-minute Q&A. So that's a total of 35 minutes that you're just deep diving with two VCs who are active investors. So, sorry about that. Who are active investors, and so who really care about this work. So there's those introductions and the matching up. Another way is introducing them to each other so that they can do business with each other. So this is the community parts of this is business referrals. Like how many business referrals can we get them to have, like either working with each other directly or like, hey, I got a client that needs blah. Who does that? You do that? Cool. I'm going to recommend it to you. That kind of thing. The other piece is, and what we're working on right now, is actually connecting them directly to corporations. So for me, this is about getting people more capital, but getting people more capital means multiple different things. For some people, getting access to capital is going to be getting a better job until, you're ready to go to a certain point. For some people, getting access to capital is going to mean getting a larger customer, right? And then for some people, access to capital is going to mean getting your first customer. And so Black Girl Ventures is helpful in those ways. Like one of the women who pitched in our South by Southwest competition had to go virtual. And so one of the women who pitched, her name is Shananye. She's the founder of Alera Apothecary. And well, she lost out on sales because you can't do anything face-to-face right now, or at that moment for sure. And so I'm like, oh, hey, you have hand sanitizer. Well, let's promote that. So between us going live with her on the Black Girl Ventures Instagram and sending out through the Black Girl Ventures email list, she saw a 45% uptick in sales for her product. Like that to me is long-term sustainable. Now you got a new customer. Now you got some new data points. Now you have an actual real-time connection with customers. That is invaluable for us.
That makes a lot of sense. You're delivering access to capital, but different types of capital, not only money but social and and what have you. So that's great, and the expertise. How are you uniquely finding or identifying these female founders of color? For the other investors that, yes, they could come to you and build relationships with you as well, but how are you creating that community so that more of these more of the investors, even if they're not of color, can better find and connect to the founders of color?
Well, it's interesting to me that the investors would claim to have business acumen, but not know how to find customers. Right? Like it is a target audience, right? So you do what you would do for any other product. You go to where they are. You promote to where they are. You have conversations with the people about where they are and who they are and how they are. And you insert yourself, right, in those places. I think like being Black Girl Ventures, of course, helps. The fact that we're all women-led team of all Black women, helps, right? Like, so we know how to speak the language. We know where they are. We know how to find them. They know how to find us. Speaking, I do a lot of speaking. I travel internationally and I speak to entrepreneurs and coaching and workshops and things like that. So I would say like the heightened visibility. I mean, our secret sauce at Black Girl Ventures is engagement. Like people, people ask like, how are you doing it? We're engaging. Like that's pretty much it. Like just engage. There's lots of people out there waiting to engage. So just engage with them. So I would say to those VCs and investors, if they're truly looking for, because I think, we can talk about, are you really looking for? Then what are you doing to look for?
Yep.
And it's just another version of a target audience. And maybe you work B2B, because I know like the way investors feel or firms feel is like they don't have time to go like to this area, like grassroots level themselves. So working with organizations like us makes sense. You know, there's a lot of organizations like ours out there that makes sense for them to work with in order for them to be able to find the people they're looking to find. The thing is like, who are you looking to find, right? So I'm also, you know, a lot of investors are looking at growth stage, where if you're looking at growth stage, you're gonna only find a handful of Black founders in particular, and likely a handful of women of color in that arena. And again, this is historical, right? So like the idea behind like the lack of intergenerational capital due to redlining, Black Wall Street blowing up, the different ways that across different cities where Black wealth was attempted to be created, the Freeman's Bank, you know, like these things being bombed literally, or like torn down, or just like dissipated. And then all of a sudden you're expected to grow from zero. So like I think like the history is like people are like, oh well, why don't Black folks have generational capital? And it's like, oh, because it was actually legal. It was actually illegal for us to have capital in certain ways. And then as it became legal, it got blown up. And so it was like a start from scratch, not a start from a little bit, but totally from scratch, right? Your entire hotel is blown up. The white man who ran the Freeman's Bank stole the money. Like, you know, so it's like, it's layers on layers of why it's not there. But ultimately, okay, let's just acknowledge it's not there and start innovating, instead of trying to pretend that it is there or push that it might be, or you know, make up some story in our heads about why. Why are we still talking about that? Innovate. What are we gonna do now, right?
I love it. No, it speaks to the entrepreneurial nature, right? It's like there's a problem. It is what it is. But in saying that, it doesn't mean you just accept it, right? You move to action, and you're doing that, building this community. So that's great. And if you're to dive in deeper into and well, also take a step back. Love what you said about just diving in and engaging in the community. That's not and using a phrase from there's another VC and Black VC that said either hire or wire. That just if you're
Hire
just
or wire.
yeah
That is the word right now.
yeah, if you are mentoring and judging, that being self-conscious, that if you're not putting your money where your mouth is, that it's more about your ego. And that is and it all depends, right? Like that is, if it's an angel investor or an aspiring investor that doesn't yet have capital, that is the capital they have to give, right? But if they have money, then there's little to no excuse, if that makes sense. But moving back, can you share a little bit about how how you even came up with Black Girl Ventures? How did it begin? How did you go from hey, this is a problem, to I'm going to do something about it, and starting to get these entrepreneurs some money?
Yeah, great question. So I started it in 2016, but prior to this, I had a couple business ideas. So I've always been entrepreneurial, and I lived a lot of lives, right? So I'm a computer scientist in training. I taught public school for a while, worked for the Patent and Trademark Office. I worked in workforce development, ran some large contracts. I worked in, I had my own art organization where I was building like community that way. And so like art was really my first like entry point into what it meant to build community and what the effects of building community could be long term. And the fact that some people had a place to go to. Right. So if you needed something, and that's why I think why I'm so passionate about like community building as a service, because I'm going to do a business plan canvas, I should call somebody at SCORE. They're not, and the people at SCORE are like, what? So anyway, saying all that to say, as an artist, I had a community all the time, and realized like when I got into business, so I started, like I said, I owned a couple of things. And then I, right before Black Girl Ventures, I launched a print shop and a t-shirt line where I like just really, really dug into what it meant to create a product and launch it and actually make it successful. And I learned through that experience about doing business with corporations and supplier diversity and what that meant to really level up the amount of capital that you have in order to really, really grow your business. On top of just like B2C things with the t-shirt line, I really learned from the print shop how to price yourself, how to price your products, the manufacturing process. I learned about different textiles, even different mediums for printing things. And then from the business side, learned about wholesaling, learned about working with manufacturers overseas, learned about so it was just all these things were happening. And I was growing my business and looked around and was like, wow, this is actually pretty lonely. Like like I said, in the art world, you can just go to an open mic. Like if you're a poet, you just go to an open mic and there's a whole audience and they're like, yay, and as a business owner, that was not there. And so I created it really out of that. Like on top of like, there's not this community-based experience here, and there's not this this easy access to capital piece. And women are starting businesses and they're not getting access to capital. What could I do? Let's just all get together, put some money in a hat and give it away. And that's literally how it started.
That's great. That's great. And can you share more about, can you share more? What are some of the ventures that you've backed? I know I'm, looked on your LinkedIn page. There's a number of ventures you have listed there that you've successfully backed, but can you share a story about any of them that you've backed, how much you raised for them and what that did for them?
Yeah, 100%. So my favorite story is Kai Frazier from Curated by Kai, Kai XR. She's now expanding. And I met her actually through the K-Port Center. I was doing a BGV style competition for the K-Port Center. They brought me on to partner with them and do that. And I was coaching the different people who were pitching. And she had never pitched before. She was so nervous. She was like, oh my God, I don't know. How am I going to do this? And so I'm like, okay, we got it. Do this, add this to your story. So I'm coaching her. So we get to the day of, she kills it. Just like amazing pitch. And she and I just stayed in contact. So when the next year went to the next South by Southwest following that, I told her, hey, come pitch at the Black Girl Ventures pitch competition at South by Southwest. So she put in her application to pitch. She came, and immediately after she pitched, everybody clapped for like 30 seconds. And like at that point, we all knew who won. It was just like, yes, oh my God. Like it was, and what she does is she takes kids on field trips using VR. And so she has the VR goggles and the VR, like the cardboards. And she also records. So she records the museums. And then a child from anywhere can go on a field trip to that museum using VR. And she's now expanded in XR where you'll be able to it's more accessible on more platforms. And so from there, she won about $5,000 from our sponsoring company at the time, which was Bumble. And then on top of that, won another a couple of thousand from just the donations. And after that, now she has gone on to become a part of Techstars. She is now just traveling all over the country, all over the world, all over the country. That's right. Traveling all over the country. She's also video. She's done in 360, done a few different museums across the country. She's hired a team. She is like killing it right now. She's moving and shaking. And really, really just a sweetheart, like to her core. We keep in touch, always cheering her on. And that's all a part of the impact, right?
Got it.
So now she's an employer. She's a Techstars alum. And is now expanding from VR into XR.
That's great. And you're part of, there's like many hands make it make it possible. So no, that's great. And can you share a little bit more about, especially with the protests focused on, institutional racism and just highlighting and bringing to light the blight, the the Black community has faced for a long time, and calling people to action of what we can do about it. How has that impact Black Girl Ventures?
So it's crazy because it's been a bit of a mix. It feels like mixed feelings, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, this tragedy, police brutality has happened again. And here we are, faced with the same conversation. And it's disheartening, and it's heavy. And, watching those videos and what they mean to the Black community is just, people who are not Black, I appreciate the empathy, right? But it's still hard for you to even fathom what it feels like to be a part of a community that these types of things are happening to, right? And so yes, and because I'm a yes and kind of person, we have received an outpour of support. When I say, oh my God, for the first time in the history of me doing this work, or community building in general, I would say, I am being asked and funded. I'm being funded for the work that I am doing, not the work that I've done, and not the work I'm going to do in the future. People are like, and people are doing their diligence. So I know that some people are like, oh, people are co-opting. There's a lot of conversation about people's responses. But for us in particular, they have been very genuine. And they have been like, I found this organization. I vetted them out. Like, people are going and looking at who we are. They're reading our website. They're reading they're looking at our Instagram. Like, they're looking through who we are before they fund. And we've had amazing brands reach out to partner and donate. So we've talked to Veuve Clicquot, Warby Parker. We've had a bunch of beauty brands. So like Rare Beauty Brands, which is a larger brand, behind a few brands, have reached out. We're partnering and working with them. There's a store over in Georgetown, which made some really great women's founders from this store called Tucker Nook. We've had some celebrities actually donate, and it has been magical to watch. And it also is super empowering, because it's like, hey, thank you for seeing what we've been doing. Right. And I think it's lazy of people to just give to the NAACP, or just give to UNCF, or just give to the Urban League. Don't get me wrong. These organizations have been around for a long time, and they've been doing the work that they felt is needed. And there's a lot of grassroots organizations like ours, or smaller nonprofits like ours, who are serving the modern day entrepreneur, who are adjacent to the investment world, who are, I am in a lot of these conversations, whether I'm reading applications for incubators and accelerators, whether I am on the panels to evaluate their pitches, even outside of our pitch, right? So it's been magical to see the response. What I am hopeful of is that it will continue. I'm hopeful that this is annual, not annual police brutality, but I'm hopeful that it's annual donors. I'm hoping.
And calling to action. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I'm calling for actual change. I'm calling for you to now be like, this is who I am now. This is how I donate my funding now. This is how I move now. Like, that's what I'm calling people to be, because I think people woke up in a way that, like, it's funny. A friend of mine was a very well-known activist named Sonya, like metaphor of like Snow White. So like Snow White has been sleeping the whole time, right? And then wakes up, and then the dwarfs have been like killing the game. Like, they built a whole area. They kept her safe. They were doing, they was doing all kinds of things. And now she's like, oh my God, could you educate me so much on who you are and what you do? And the dwarfs are like, Slim, back up and go read a book, because we are working. Okay. So I think there's this layered thing that happened where it just feels like there is a potential turning of the tides. Now, with the investment realm, like the finance industry is so hard to move, right? Like, it literally has to get disrupted in order for them to really, really move. And unfortunately, I don't know that police brutality is enough of a disruption, even in this way that we saw the tragedy unfold, that the finance world will shift. Because a lot of the things that are coming out, like, oh, we're going to do 2 million here, we're going to do 5 million, 50 million, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? If you're a growth stage investor, then thank you for saying that, but that's not realistic for what you're actually about to do. And if you're saying that because you needed to say it, and it does, and then nothing actually happens because you're like, oh, well, we tried because, but we only write checks in the growth stage. Okay, no. You need to innovate. It's time for you to innovate.
Yeah,
Okay, if you only write checks in the growth stage, then like figure a way to create another business segment, creating an emerging fund leaders program. Emerging fund managers program. Partner with social enterprises and nonprofits like ours to say, here, we're going to line item this way. Come on now, they know how to do this, but I have to question whether or not they want to.
absolutely, hands down. No, and I think that's a great call to action. Is it's going to take more than just adding a plus one or putting people in your current machine. The current machine's not working, so you're going to have to think about creative ways to make it better, for sure. So Shelly, how do people find you and support Black Girl Ventures?
Yes, so you can follow Black Girl Ventures. So www.blackgirlventures.org, of course, and then on Instagram it's at Black Girl Ventures. On Twitter it's at B Girl Ventures. We also have a page on LinkedIn. You can look us up, Black Girl Ventures. You can follow me at I am Shelly Bell, and I am ShellyBell.com to see the rest of the services that I offer, because I do also offer coaching and working with enterprises to help them diversify as well. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Shelly, for sharing your story with us and your time today, sharing a little bit more about Black Girl Ventures. And for everyone watching, this is Rebel One Live, elevating investors and CEOs that are dedicated to change. So thank you, Shelly, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.